John Mouratis, thanks for joining me. Do you have a what the fuck happened moment, but that kind of defined where you've got to today?
Hello, everyone. First of all, thank you for having some. That's great.
Absolutely.
And I look forward to watching more of those coming out. Yes, so for everyone who has never heard of me before, doesn't know me, my name is John. I'm working in video production and I'm originally from Greece. And I think what the fuck moment was I moved to London 2020 in the middle of the pandemic
Good
because
time.
of difficulties that I would face after because of Brexit. And I think during the time I moved, it was a very difficult period to get into the industry. Other time, right now I'm working in commercials, but other time I used to aspire to work more in film and TV, which was very difficult to break into. But then the what the fuck moment was that my first project in the whole industry in the UK was with Netflix in a Netflix production. And the reason behind that is purely lack on the fact that when things started open up after the pandemic, there was a backlog of 2 to 3 years of productions. So the industry needs so many people. So I think that allowed me to get a foot straight into a project that if I would do without the pandemic, it might take me 2, 3, 4, 5 years or whatever. So yeah, I think that was probably my what the fuck moment.
To be fair, I think a lot of people had COVID as their what the fuck moment. But
Yeah.
I guess most people would say it was like a worldwide what the fuck is going on moment. So it's good that something kind of positive came out for you after that in terms of, a lot of these things, like I think you'll speak to anyone who's like, founded a company or like got themselves to a really cool position and you ask them, what was your strategy? And they were like, it was potluck. Basically, it's sort of something happened out of my control. But I think the main thing and like one of the themes of the conversations we have with the what the fuck happened theme is like there are people who like have that bit of luck and then do the right thing in order to grab it. So obviously you have to be in the right mindset and have the right skill set in order to take that opportunity when it does come along. So obviously you were in a place where you could take the opportunity and obviously go from strength to strength. So what was it then? What was the path after you took that opportunity to where you are now?
Yes, so I think also to add to that, like a friend of mine described to me in a nice way at some point. He was like every all of us have a field, and luck is like rain. And basically, the more stuff you do in order to expand your field, the more likely it is that it will rain at some part of it. So it has to work between. You have to put the effort, and then you increase your chances getting lucky. From Greece, the video production part is very different. Unless you are in Athens and you are doing service jobs for companies that come outside and they want to use Greece as location. In the other parts of Greece, the industry is not well developed. So every set feels more like a student film set. Everyone does a bit of everything. Like there are not clear roles. There's not enough budget for people. Everyone tries to work it out. So when I moved here, I think the first thing that I did was like just learn how things work properly.
Yeah.
Learn what departments is, learn where you can help. I think that's the most important thing. Like whatever you see, like how can I help? How can I provide value? How can I make someone's day easier? And how can I be proactive with things that come on? I think especially when being on set, but in general when being across a project, there is always something to do. That's always a good reminder for me. Like if there is a moment of silence, that's a moment to prepare for when the storm comes. So there is always something to do in order to allow you to be as prepared as possible for when the what the fuck moment comes, because there will come. It's natural in production, like it will happen. So yes, basically what I did is I worked in film and TV production for like near a year. I worked 6 days a week, probably 13 to 14 hours a day. I got tired of it, mentally and physically drained, because I only had a Sunday for laundry and sleep. And then I decided to jump into short form only until I figure out what I want to do. And then I developed a love for the commercial part, so I stayed within it.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, you talk about that sort of doing the right things in the quiet moments. Dojo films have a cadence. We work with B2B SaaS companies on their branded content, so like brand films and other video content across their marketing activities. But we're always quiet from like November to January when all of these companies are re-strategizing and pulling their new budgets for the next calendar year together. We're always like, it won't happen this year. We've got loads of conversations going, and then suddenly everything goes quiet. But the good thing is, in that period, we look at processes, we look at roles and responsibilities and accountability, how we can restructure anything. If we grow, what will be the hiring strategy? So all those things do come together, and then suddenly we're in that moment right now where like all of the briefs are coming in and we're getting all this work, and we're like, we do generally feel ready for that. It's like sort of opening the dam and still having a structural bit of architecture around it, so it doesn't all come gushing through. But yeah, no, I completely agree that that use of the quiet time is really pivotal to individuals and companies, I think. So how did you end up moving from that sort of TV film world into founding Storyflow Entertainment?
The thing with our industry that I'm talking quite often about is there is a lot of fake it till you make it in our industry. That's one thing. And there are a lot of people who want to get in higher ranks extremely fast. So there are many people who are in their mid 20s. I'm in my late 20s at the moment, who like they will do, let's say, they will do lower budget projects. In our industry, it's very common to start from music promos, for example, or
Yeah.
to do like lower budget content jobs. And then because they need those jobs need a producer, but they don't have the money to afford an actual producer, you have like a production assistant or a production coordinator jumping up and trying their luck, and everyone is happy.
Yeah.
And they take the credit. And then by taking 5 of those credits, then they become a producer and they label themselves as a producer. And then they can do a content job or a commercial job because at the end of the day, it's who you know in this industry. And that's how naturally they develop into a producer role. Which means what they have done is like they have jumped over what would be 10-year corporate career of where you would go from a PA to production coordinator to a production manager to a producer, like etc. throughout the roles. So what happens is probably you're good because there is a lot of talent out there, there is a lot of knowledge out there. It's, you know, like YouTube, TikTok, people like you and me who share content, like there is a lot of source to learn. At the same time, like in the production world and in any job, I assume, there is only that much that books and education can teach you. Some things you need to do to learn and to embrace and to understand. Because I think many people who go through the ranks faster, they have a big ego. So until they make the mistake themselves, they don't really listen easily to older people's opinion because they believe like, no, it's different. You don't get it. It's not your blah, blah, etc. I'm not on that mindset. So for me, when I want to produce, I was like, if I fuck it up, I want to be my own mistake. I want to be my own accountability. I don't want to freelance for another company that trusts me to produce on something that I wasn't ready for. And then I fuck it up and then they lose a relationship with the client, for example. So that's why I was like, okay, cool. I'll start my company. I'll give my opportunity to myself to produce, try to get my own clients, also see that part because I'm interested in business development, and then go from there. And then I still do that. Like, still to this day, Storyflow is 3 years old. Like, we're doing great projects. We have a lot of fun. Still, the majority of our team freelances because we're like, we want to learn from senior people. We want to learn from other people. And at the end of the day, to be honest with you, it's really nice to go and do a job for another company and don't have to worry about all the stuff that business owners have to worry about. Take the day rate and go home. So, you know, I built it mostly as a solution for myself to get an opportunity to try different stuff without burning anyone in the process.
Yeah. No, it's really important actually. I think I had this. I was working in television for a while, and you know, I managed to get in as a researcher actually because I was slightly older when I entered the TV world. So that was already skipping out that sort of runner step. And then I got made an assistant producer reasonably quickly, and that felt like an accelerated path. And I was still like, I don't like the fact that now it's probably 6 years of APing until I can do any directing jobs. That's just like people like that's how it is. And I was like, I don't want to wait that long. So I went off and like formed my own company, and that's sort of that is the other route. Is like if you think you've made a few contacts and you're a self-starter, then you can just go do it yourself. But you have to be very self-driven rather than sitting in this system where you know if you do your time, essentially, you will get there. But you'll be sort of mid-40s before you do.
Absolutely. I think the film and TV world is also the most corporate structure of our industry in general as an entertainment. Like you have to, because the older people and the most senior people in the industry are within that world. So it's like, you know, it's like your manager is 20 years older than you. They went through a process of where they had to stay 5 years within a role before they progress. So they're like, why you shouldn't be different? That's the proper way to do it. So I think it makes sense, especially for freelancers and for agency advertising world, that they do more like hopping between different companies from different major agencies to smaller agencies and jumping between roles. So it makes more sense. Like, if you feel like you're ready, you shouldn't wait.
Yeah, nice. And so you've gone more into the sort of commercial video storytelling space. What are your thoughts on the state of play of like video marketing today? Like storytelling is always storytelling, but the game is slightly changing now. Do you have sort of views on that?
I think it has changed quite many times over the last period. So where do you want to compare it to? 5 years ago, 10 years ago? What is the comparison?
I mean, you could compare it to last year. If you looked at this
Uh,
year, you could literally compare it to last year, but it depends. I just want to get your sense of what is shifting and how the mechanics of storytelling may be changing.
well, yes, it's interesting. Like the first interesting thing that is shifting already has started, I believe, after the pandemic, but it's still going strong. I think is first of all is a structure on the commercial sense. So what used to be a flat line of production, which means a brand had an agency, an advertising, PR agency, however you want to call it. They were going to them. The agency was creating the briefs for the video projects. That was going to the production company. The production company producing them back to the agency. The agency was dealing with the delivery back to the client. That used to be a flat line. Nowadays, because of two things, budgets have shrunk per asset, which means like budgets are as high as they used to be, but there is so much more need for volume and content. So per asset, you have less money to work with. So what that means is production companies are not going to charge less. So what that means is like, how do we save on costs? And usually the process of that is in-housing. So what used to be a very flat line, and clients used to value a lot of outside external creative expertise, and that's why they were going to agencies, and similar, that's why agents, they were going to production companies. Nowadays, it's all a bit together, which means the client has their own in-house production team. They might do a lot of the content stuff there. The agencies might have their own in-house production team, or they might acquire production companies to have them as their own production teams. And then the production companies, in order to find a solution to that, they were never used to go direct to client because they don't want to bite the hand that fed them, which is the agencies. Yeah. But right now they understand that the agencies try to cut them out of the system. So now they go straight to the client. And because production companies always used to charge lower margins than what agency does, many clients they prefer them because it feels like sometimes agencies might act as a middleman compared to adding value to the whole equation. So they feel like things are faster and cheaper. So I think the way that content gets delivered and the way that companies work with suppliers have changed massively and is still changing, and everyone tries to navigate that, like how do we find success within that system. In terms of the actual video, I feel like obviously there is the part of AI, which is a whole different conversation and we could do if you want to do so, but there is the whole rise of UGC throughout the pandemic, and then the whole need of authentic content and more higher quality content that now jumps on. So it's like coming in and out of different waves of like, how much do we focus on long form versus short form? What is the power of YouTube versus TikTok, especially after the ban and they saw that the platform might be a bit weak. So it's like, but I think, to be honest with you, it's just history repeats itself. It always used to be that way. There are always waves coming in and out of the system. AI is probably the biggest one because similar to the internet, it's probably the biggest technological advancement we have seen in 20 years and will change everything. But yeah, I think we go out and in and out of phases as always.
Yeah. I think the interesting thing in terms, before we go into the sort of AI conversation, I think the interesting thing about the production going straight to brand is started as a traditional production company. You know, give us a brief, we give you the assets at the end. That sort of, you know, we'll bring our creativity to it, and then, you know, we may advise you, but more and more that advice piece and the consultancy piece on, okay, where are these things going? Do you have buyer personas and an audience spec so we know who we're speaking to? Do you have the tone of voice? Do you have you know, different outputs for each of your channels? And then like the work we're doing in all of those conversations is not what a traditional production company does. It's because these brands are like, well, look, we could spend 3 or 4 times the amount on an agency, but actually, if you're willing to give us a bit of advice, then we can do it through you. And I think that's the interesting thing of like, we're starting to pick up skill sets that would normally sit with an agency in terms of data and insights and how is this going to be placed and what's the language we need to use to speak to the right audience, and all that kind of stuff is normally happens before we get a brief.
Yes.
So it does feel like sometimes a brand is keen to go direct to a production company, but still get some of the services that an agency would provide.
Absolutely. Like I can add to that point because that's a great example. One thing that I always try to remind people to be mindful of, although it's an open market and everyone does whatever they want. It's like, but a production company, as you say, rightly so, is there to produce assets. Their job is not strategy. Their job, it is creative in a sense that they apply the film creative within a creative brief that an agency gives them, but their job that is not valued based on the strategy or based on the delivery and the outcomes, etc. So, and that's why their margin is lower than an agency, because they are not playing that big role on the how much money the client is going to make. But then if the client wants some of those skill sets, which is like strategy, etc., and then you have video production companies turning into, now we use like fancy terms that going around, turning into a video agency, which is absolutely the hybrid between the two. And that's there is a market for that. There is a need for that. That's why those companies were created or transformed from a production company. Then obviously that needs to be charged back to the client. Now, will it be charged to the extent that the traditional agency would charge it? It depends to the company. Because, for example, let's say that usually those video agencies and video production companies in general are smaller companies in size. Usually they're not extending the 50 people mark, only because they work quite a lot on project-based stuff compared to retainers. Cash flows are a bit difficult to calculate. Overheads are a bit difficult to calculate, etc. And then in those smaller companies, it's just to the decision of the business owners and the finance people to be like, how much money are we happy with? I mean, how much growth are we happy with? So you might not charge what the traditional advertising agency would charge. You might charge less, but it's still higher than what you were charging before, and you are happy with that extra profit that goes into your pocket and to put the effort in. Well, when I say the pocket, I mean either the pocket or the business growth, however you want to invest it. But it needs to be charged, because what I see out there is obviously people even younger than you and me starting production companies, videos, however you want to call it. And the easiest thing to do always is compete on price, obviously. So it's like, how much do we give a client while not charging for it? And it's just part of their service. And at the end of the day, what happens, unfortunately, and I think it was always the case for the advertising world, is that clients get what they want without any pushback. And what happens for them is like they start expecting it as part of the service. And they don't understand that it was, let's say, a favor that the production company did them. So then you educate a whole new side of clients. Nowadays it's a bit better because there are many people who jump from agency life to client side and they have seen both sides.
Yeah.
But if they don't, what we all do as an industry, we educate a client to expect certain things while not paying for them, and then asking that service from every other supplier that they will see in the future, which drives down our whole industry in terms of value compared to price, basically.
Yeah, I remember when I started working as a freelancer first up and sort of set up Dojo Films as a sort of look bigger than I am type thing, as you were saying earlier. The guy I worked with, I was in Soho, above the Windmill actually, which is the oldest strip club in London. And we were in this like tiny little office, and the guy I worked with ran a really cool production company, and he was a bit further ahead than me, had done it for quite a few years. And we got this brief, which he was going to help me with. And he had an in-house red, which I was like, amazing. And I had just got a Canon 5D3 because I was just starting out. And I just really wanted it to impress the client. So the client was like, here's the budget. And he's like, oh, we'll just do it on your 5D3. And I was like, well, you've got the red. Why don't we just take that and do an awesome job? And he's like, for this budget, if we go and shoot with the red, they're going to think that you can have this budget and shoot with a red and get all the bells and whistles, and the workflow's harder, and like you have to, and he was very much of the same mindset, like you cannot deflate the market. Even if you have this thing in-house, you need to price it properly and push for that price. Otherwise, you are telling every client, anyone out there with a red should do it for this amount. And that just isn't financially viable for people who have bought a red and own a red and have to get the glass and all the modular stuff that goes along with it, and then the RD3 workflow. And he sort of really explained it quite well to me. And I was like, oh, yeah, I get that. I was just excited because I wanted to go and make something as good as possible. Do you know what I mean? So that there is that mentality of wanting to make the most beautiful thing you can, while also, if the budget's not there, you just need to say, well, look, you can't afford this level of production.
Absolutely. And I think that comes down to the perspective, again, usually younger people when they start their companies. And when I say younger, I don't mean in terms of age, obviously, I mean in terms of how long have you been in the industry for.
Greener.
Yeah. When they start their company, they go very aggressively on every project because they have the huge ambition to dominate the market. And what I always try to explain to people is, our companies are offering a production service which is being provided in different ways, shapes and forms, absolutely, but is being provided from so many other companies. Like only the UK registered, it has 17,000 production companies. Only the UK. Obviously, not all of them are active, but it's a crazy amount. And what that means is like we all will get a small piece of the market, and we should be fine with it and should be happy with it because that's how it works. Our offer doesn't require huge R&D. We didn't innovate something completely new. You know what I mean? It's like we provide production service that has been provided for 100 years in different shapes and forms again, but that's the service we provide. And that's why, for example, me and you, although we operate in different clients and stuff like that, we can sit down and have a very solid conversation, and we don't care because in some other industry and market people could see us as competitors, but we can have a sit-down conversation without any worry because we all take our small piece of the market, and that's fine. And that's the beauty of the industry as well. I'm happy to pass jobs to other people are happy to pass jobs with me without any worry because there are so many clients out there and we can all serve some. And it's a collaborative industry at the end. So, yeah, I think we should not, as your friend back then said, deflate the value of the market as a whole. It's bad for everyone.
I will touch on the point you said, which is, it's worked the same for 100 years. That brings us on to AI, because that R&D piece may actually change the fact that it's been the same workflow for a long time. It's been a buzzword for a good couple of years now. Basically, ChatGPT got launched, and that was just wow, this is a free service, and it can change my workflow for so many things. And since then, it's just become the most, competitive exponential growth industry across every industry, but it's also affecting video production. So I just want to get your thoughts on benefits, negatives, what's your perception on the opportunity?
Definitely I'm bullish on it. I definitely like it. I think we have to be careful on the legal side, which I'm not an expert to talk about, and how we protect so many jobs for so many people. I think what we have seen the last couple of years, and we might see for a year or two more, is an adjustment period, which is a new technology is being introduced in the market. Unfortunately, maybe because of the pandemic and a bit of recession as well, but as always, clients see it as an opportunity to cut costs instead of gaining further market share. So it means who can we cut who from our people is not good enough and can be replaced by AI, instead of being who of our people can we educate on AI in order to be able to double the amount of what they produce from their work. Unfortunately, that's the mindset of many companies out there, because it's so much faster and easier to simply cut people out and be okay, our revenue is out, our costs have gone down, our profit has blah, blah, whatever. And then 3 years down the line, you are why am I losing market share? So I think one thing to consider is the fact that although in advertising world, all we do at the end of the day is we sell shit in some way or another. Hopefully we sell good shit, and we sell ethical products. But there are many people in this world who are creatives, and they have an artistic part of their passion for their craft and themselves. And they see AI taking that away a bit, taking away what used to be a very nostalgic, romantic, beautiful story of storytelling and human-led, very human-led. Not only on the processes, but in front of the camera as well. The tricky part, I actually had this conversation yesterday, is the tricky part it will be to find good talent that is bullish on AI. What you have at the moment is we have new, very hot creators that are jumping on AI, and you see them across all LinkedIn, for example, AI artists, etc. And they produce great stuff in terms of visuals. They don't have advertising experience. They don't understand what it means to sell something. So it's great, it looks great, but it doesn't mean that it will sell something. And then you have directors, let's say, for example, that have been in the advertising world for 20 years, and they know very well how to sell stuff, or 10 years, or whatever it is, but they don't want to touch AI because they consider it a disgrace to their craft. So it's our industry is based on talent. How do you find good talent that knows both, is bullish on both, and can help companies leverage it to the biggest extent? The generative part, it's still not great. Like to anyone who hasn't played with it, don't let a highlight reel that OpenAI created for their promo deceive you that, this is how you will do if you go and play 5 minutes with it. Every clip like that might take you 10 hours to create. It probably took them more. If you just go and play with prompts, it's not great. But at the same time, if you start playing with prompts now, you will get much better when it is ready and it is fast, and you will know how to work around the system. So I definitely encourage everyone to have a play with it, to look what's around. For example, you are operating in the B2B SaaS world. I don't think there is any tech company out there that doesn't use AI in any form or extent. Now, how much they have extended that to their creative side, that's a different story. But they use it in their marketing side. Obviously, if you operate within other industries that are not that heavy in the tech world, AI will catch up much slower. I know businesses in the real estate world that don't have a website. I mean, it's like they still haven't discovered the internet era, and the internet era started 20 years ago. And they still are great because their jobs are based on who you know, long-term contracts, high-value contracts, high-value clients, etc. But if you're a tech-based company, like you have AI already, so how do you translate that in the creative world? It's still a process.
I think you mentioned the sort of R&D of video production not having to do it for so long. Now it seems like it's not just R&D for a video production company. It's kind of like an individual R&D. Like learning AI is an individual pursuit in a way. A lot of this sort of I heard a really interesting thing. It was actually a week after ChatGPT was launched. We went to DMXCO, which is in Cologne. It's like a digital marketing exhibition. And obviously AI was the talk of the town. And the big mantra that was going around was, you won't be replaced by AI, you'll be replaced by the person who uses it better than you. And I think that idea of like back in the 60s, learning to use a typewriter was a skill that put you in an incredible position. Now prompting as a science is going to put you in a really great position. Like it's prompting AI is a skill that you can hone, as you said, and it's just going to put you in this incredible position to use the tools as and when they become ready for market.
Yeah. It's also like two things on that side. One is the biggest improvement. People love what they see, so they think that the biggest improvement will be on the generative part. The biggest improvement will always be, at least on the advertising says, of the backend plan. So it's like the longest time for people who don't work in this industry is when the amount of time it takes you to sign off on ideas, especially with the bigger companies you work. So it's like what it used to take like 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks of creating decks and then animating and the previews and stuff like that, and how things will look and storyboards and things like that. That's the process that will be accelerated and be like, cool, do you want to see how this will look? It will take me a day. What used to take me 3 weeks. So it means that we can have a back and forth much faster, and we can land on the idea what you want to produce. And then probably you go and produce it, yes, with the help of AI, but the production side, I don't think it will change much. What you see on set, I think it will be evolved, but it won't be scrapped from AI. That's one thing. Yeah. And the second thing, I think the digital, what we cannot sense, what we cannot use our senses to feel, we are much more dissociated with. So the difference between going from a horse to a car is that the car, you could still touch it, sit on it, hear it, see it, be there. The difference is like the digital side, AI, we don't understand it, we don't see it, we don't touch it, we don't sense it, we don't smell it. We cannot connect with it, so we are much more afraid of it because we don't know what's behind there. Obviously, the best thing you can do is educate yourself, but that's a whole different discussion and very difficult. And if you want to educate yourself, probably using AI to help you educate yourself is the easiest way. Like go to ChatGPT and ask it any question you want about ChatGPT, probably will be the easiest way to do it.
Sure. That's interesting. I think another area of something that obviously you've engaged in heavily, which is potentially not as new as AI, but it's definitely seen as a reasonably new thing, especially on LinkedIn, is the idea of personal branding. You've obviously been very successful in building a network and putting forward your point of view on stuff and making LinkedIn a very valuable asset for you as a social media sort of site. What was your initial, like, how did that get into your head as something you needed to do, and then how did you build value from it?
Well, first of all, thank you very much for your words. That's very kind of you. I started 2 years ago. At the time, I want to get my name out there in some way or form. I caught on the transition, a bit after the transition, but it still used to be considered a very boring place. It still used to be very text-based. And all the people in the creative world used to be over on Instagram, obviously TikTok as well a bit, but mostly on Instagram, because that was the visual platform since it started. That was the visual platform where you post your screen grabs, how nice your project is, etc., etc. And the thing is, creatives in our world, unfortunately, I don't know, but they value more the opinion of other creatives instead of the opinion of their clients. So it's like, although they know that their clients are on LinkedIn, they prefer to go on Instagram because as a cinematographer, for example, on Instagram you will find more other cinematographers that will see your work and you will have a community that will be like, oh, that's amazing, etc. And you value their opinion more because they know your craft. From a business sense, it doesn't make much sense because it's better to go where your client is and impress them and get them. So I went to LinkedIn basically because I thought their clients were there and there were not many creative voices there. So probably have better chance to succeed. Over time, I fell in love with content creation. English is not my native language as well, so writing down posts helps me a lot to understand my thoughts, to break down my thoughts, to communicate. And then over time, obviously, as you say, you develop a community, you find other people like yourself again. And yes, it's nice. It's nice to be able to have an opinion. Now, it's difficult, it's more tricky for people who have a business and an existing client network. Like when I started out, I didn't have clients. My freelance managers were not on LinkedIn. So I didn't care about anyone's thoughts about what I said. So I said my honest opinions, and sometimes I have controversial opinions. So that works, like because especially with a young account, because someone will scroll in your feed and will stop, and they will pay attention because they don't see much of it elsewhere. Now over time, what that does, it helps me to create a client network and a freelance network and whatever it is through the opinions I have already voiced. So it's much easier from now on to keep voicing the same opinions because I'm not afraid of it. What I have seen in the past is like I've talked with other business owners, video production or company owners as well, where they are much more risk averse on the way they voice their opinion because they're like, well, we have certain client network, we have a certain team, we have a certain cost to pay. We cannot, and that's fair enough. I totally get it. We have to be careful with what to say. Because then you turn more into a corporation and you have to be careful with what you voice and how you communicate and everything. And that's totally fair.
Yeah, no, I get that. I think as much as possible, if you can use your LinkedIn to be yourself, it is better. So you should be able to voice your opinion on stuff because it's not you speaking as X company, you're speaking as you. But I'm not sure whether people see that delineation so clearly. And sometimes,
it's very difficult. Because if you are a 10 people company, people will deal with some. Your clients will deal with some. You know what I mean? It's like, yes, you have Dojo and you build a brand around and you develop it, but the clients know some. You know what I mean? If you are Sam going to reach them out tomorrow with another company name, you can ask yourself, will they go with Sam or will they stay with Dojo? You know what I mean? It's like, what is the main connection there? I know, for example, with me, if I go to another company, they will go with John. They will not go with Storyflow. I have not much developed yet a strong brand around it to stay under the company, which I don't mind at the same time because it's a people business at the end of the day.
Yeah, I think that power of the personal brand is really strong. I mean, we don't really do much from our company page because no one really engages with it. It's like people follow people. So I think you're right there, and I think that's what LinkedIn has shown more and more. And I do agree with the visual thing. I think we're speaking to more and more people who are successful on LinkedIn who generally have quite a creative visual approach to it, and it's not just sort of big blog posts. It's like a creative, especially in our sphere, just trying to bring some visual elements and bring some interesting concepts as how to tell your story in that way. A couple more questions. We ask this every time, but if you were to go back to yourself in your what the fuck moment, what would you say to yourself?
I would say to myself, prioritize your health a bit sooner. I was 23 at the time. I thought, the body will keep up with whatever it's going through. But no, like physically and mentally, I reached a point where I was like, I just got burned down the drain and then had to pick up from there. And it's always slower. It's always much more painful. So, it's like that 1 hour you will go for a run or to a gym, or that 2 hours you will take to see a friend. It's very easy, especially if you're based in a fast-paced city like London, for example. It's very easy to neglect that because you always have that comparison. Oh, yes, but if I'm going in the pub now, someone else is working and they get ahead of me. Like, don't play that game. You know what I mean? You will reach 70 and you'll be like, where the fuck did my years go? So it's like, don't go that way.
A bit of balance then would be the advice.
Yeah.
And maybe some yoga.
I would love to. I don't do so, but
And the last one, so finish the sentence. Success is.
that's so hard. Success, to be able to be yourself, to reach a point in your life where you're able to be yourself all the time and you have no restrictions in sense of financial, having someone above you, etc., to make you restrict that without fucking up other people's life along the way. So I think that's what success would be for me.
That's nice. I like that. Be able to fully be yourself without fucking anyone else. Lovely.